la tarde de hoy tenemos a un invitado especial, un ex miembro de facultad nuestro, amistad personal, all the way from Texas,
Yeah.
throwing it down from Texas. Tenemos a José Vega con nosotros, un returning favorite, que va a estar hablando con nosotros en el día de hoy sobre procesos y conceptos de level design, específicamente para el trabajo de la producción que hizo en el juego de Multiversus. So, without further ado, los dejo con José. José, ¿cómo tú estás? ¿Todo bien?
Todo bien, todo bien. Gracias por la invitación. Nuevamente.
Seguro que sí. Tú sabes que esta es tu segunda casa. Después te envío el cheque. Así que nada, el piso es todo tuyo. Si quieres hacer el screen share, it's all you, man.
Yes, let's do that. Ok, si me pueden confirmar que lo ven.
Sí, se ve bien.
Super. Y veo aquí que el nivel estaba completamente negro. Se supone que se ve así o se supone que pueda haber a alguien.
Sí, no te preocupes. Ellos
Okay.
están broadcasting allí también.
Pues súper. Bueno, nada, pues buenos días, o bueno, buenas tardes para ustedes, que ustedes están más adelantados que yo. Nada, para los que no me conocen, mi nombre es José Vega. Nuevamente, llevo alrededor de 10 años en la industria trabajando como concept artist, ilustrador, y haciendo trabajo para películas, videojuegos, mayormente videojuegos, y series de animación también. Y pues nada, pues hoy quiero hablar un poquito de el proceso y el pipeline que utilicé para los trabajos que hice para el juego Multiversus que salió este año, creo que fue. Y empecé a trabajar con ellos hace casi 4 años, maybe, que fue super early en el pre-production del juego como tal. So, cuando yo empecé, ellos no tenían realmente todavía una visión de cómo realmente iba a ser la mayoría del gameplay, cómo los environments iban a reaccionar con los personajes. So, había mucho que figure out en ese proceso además de diseñar los stages, era figure out también con el game design cómo se iba a trabajar en cuestión directamente en el juego como tal. El primer stage que yo trabajé con ellos, que fue realmente el más que se tardó porque tuvimos ese proceso de figure out a lot of things gameplay wise, espérate que cerré el folder aquí sin querer. Vamos a moverlo para acá. Fue el stage de Batman. Y les quiero enseñar cómo fue un poquito del proceso. Realmente no puedo enseñar mucho por cosas de interior del estudio como tal, pero estos stages básicamente fueron, yo diría, sobre 30 diferentes iterations. Hubieron como 30 diferentes stages del proceso del development de este particular stage. Y de nuevo, por esas mismas razones del gameplay, y el diseño y figuring out things y cambiando y etcétera. Déjame enseñarles un poco de... Y una cosa que quería mencionar antes de enseñar el proceso, well, actually two things. Si escuchan ruido raro, ya lo había mencionado, pero tengo un perrito atrás jugando, eso es en el background. I get distracted very easily, so voy a tener un battle aquí de estar aquí con ustedes y pendiente de lo que ella está haciendo. En cuestión de, y esto es algo que yo menciono mucho en las clases que yo doy y cuando hablo especialmente con estudiantes o gente entry level artists, es que yo he trabajado en series animadas, he trabajado en videojuegos, he trabajado en películas, y ahí algo que antes yo no entendía era que había mucho overlap en cuestión de las techniques que se utilizan, los tools y ese tipo de cosas en esos tres diferentes pues mundos básicamente. So, y eso es uno súper bueno porque tú puedes overlap your client base utilizando los mismos skills que utiliza para diferentes tipos de industria, right? So, los mismos skills que yo utilizo para el trabajo mío del day to day en Wizards of the Coast, pues lo puedo utilizar para crear backgrounds para un videojuego, para diseñar backgrounds para una serie animada o para una película. So, eso es una de las cosas que desde un principio siempre quería establecer, cómo tener un skill set que poco a poco lo va a develop, pero que también pueda overlap en diferentes industrias para que pues tengas más oportunidades como tal de trabajo. So eso es una, y siempre van a haber una que otra diferencia dependiendo del estudio, obviamente, y la producción. Por ejemplo, yo estoy currently working con para la serie que creo que la anunciaron, la serie de Avatar, Last Airbender, creo que va a salir en 2024, something like that. Yo estoy trabajando en esa serie y el base technical skill o tools que utilizo es lo mismo que utilizo para otros productos, o para otras industrias, pero por ejemplo, en particular con ellos es que ellos parte de ellos hire me era yo proveerles como un kit batch, porque yo trabajo mucho en 3D también, como un kit batch de los diseños que estoy utilizando, para ellos también poderlo utilizar y hacer sus propios development y todo eso. Eso es como que un poquito de diferencia, que eso no todo el mundo me lo pide, pero es parte del proceso con ellos, de parte del diseño como tal. So, déjame buscar aquí mi otro... So, cuando yo empecé con Multiversus, este fue el primer stage que fue mi primer task. Yo era el único environment designer para ese tiempo. Yo estaba trabajando como freelancer. Y ellos me proveyeron, ellos habían hecho un poquito de work, de base work en este stage en particular. Y si no me equivoco, es que tengo tantos images aquí. Esto fue como que el super early first concept que ellos hicieron, creo que fue in-house o un freelancer, no estoy seguro. Pero esto fue una de las imágenes que ellos me promovieron y me dijeron, mira, este es como que el basic idea, let's run with this. Hay un montón de cosas que figure out y diseñar, pero este es como que más o menos la idea. Y esto fue como una de las imágenes que ellos utilizaron como para también explicarme el concepto del juego. Que es bien parecido a Smash y otro tipo de juego. Pero después de eso, pues básicamente fuimos creo que fueron varios meses, actually, creo que fueron como 3 o 4 meses de development para llegar al stage final, y muchas cosas cambiaron en cuestión del diseño y cómo íbamos a separar. Una de las cosas más importantes era que ellos querían separar el playable area del resto del environment y cómo podíamos separar eso visualmente, right? So, mucho technical wise, mucho ambient perspective se utilizó para empujar las áreas que no son playable y separarlas de lo que realmente el personaje puede, para que no hubiera confusión de dónde puedas land y utilizar y eso. So, tuvimos que figure out muchas cosas técnicas de cómo de esos problemas, y uno de esos fue eso. El otro stage, ya cuando habíamos ya básicamente finalizado este stage, otra de las cosas otro de los issues que teníamos que también que figure out era qué parte de este environment iban a ser animated, right? So, nosotros no queríamos como que un very static stage, right? So, si tú te trepas en un platform, maybe el platform tiene como que un bounce, si hay algún tipo de environmental issue with the environment, por ejemplo, en este caso, las cascadas, los bats flying around, o sea, algún tipo de vehículo entrando, o algún tipo de nature thing going on with the stage que pudiera ser animado, y cómo ellos iban a poderlo resolver con el visual que yo le iba a probar, right? So eso fue otro de los issues que que teníamos que también figure out. Y otro que creo que fue como que el mayor issue es que one second. Thank you. Sorry about that. Uno de los issues era que, o el issue mayor que era como ellos no querían hacerlo un full 3D environment, which I think they end up doing it, pero al principio ellos querían algo más como un what we call a camera projection sort of like technique. So pretty much ellos querían usar mi final concept y proyectarlo en tipo very similar to a matte painting where you have like layers of images and then you sort of like layer them para hacerlos ver que hay dimensión, pero realmente son planes moving around y como la cámara se iba a básicamente mover mientras los characters se están moviendo, pues eso iba a ser un poquito tricky de cómo podían, que iban a utilizar como 3D, que iban a utilizar como planes y cómo iban a poder dividir ese layering para crear la ilusión de depth en el environment. Eso fue una cosa más tricky porque cuando usualmente yo hago concept design, realmente el level de rendering doesn't really matter as much, right? So yo puedo tener algo comparado con esta imagen un poquito más loose, less painterly, más rough, y todavía sell the same idea. Pero en este caso, como iban a usar mi actual painting, pues tenía que estar everything as polished as possible, basado en el estilo que ellos querían tener el background como tal. So eso fue como de las cosas más challenging, porque fue mucho back and forth. Se hizo mucho test rendering de como que okay, si hay una roca, yo les proveía como que diferentes ways that we can render that rock. So en diferentes estilos, o algo un poquito más realístico, un poquito más algo in the middle, algo un poquito más stylized. Y de ahí poderle entonces llevar a cabo el rendering style para todos los elementos. So, esa fue una de las cosas super más tricky que se trabajó. Now, el otro stage fue what we call it a trophy stage. No estoy seguro cómo lo llaman en el juego, pero básicamente un stage donde hay trophies that you collect and you can put them on and all that. So, este fue super, super fun porque no había un... O sea, no es como los otros stages que hay un IP established, right? So, tal el stage de Batman, hay un stage de Game of Thrones que va a salir, hay otros stages que de otros IPs, right? Pero este va a ser como que algo más neutral. So ellos básicamente me dieron como que un free reign de qué era lo que yo quería ahí. Ellos tenían más o menos una idea que me enseñaron unas referencias, pero other than that, me dijeron, pues mira, do what you want and then we'll go from there. So, este es básicamente el ejemplo con varios de los trophies, examples que tú puedes tener básicamente en el juego. Now, cuando yo estaba haciendo so I use Blender all the time. Para este proyecto era básicamente lo que utilicé. So, este es como que el primer, let's see, este es como que el primer, creo que este fue el primer 3D version que yo hice para el de Batman. Now, esto era super tricky porque el stage needs to be like right in the center. Tiene que haber un cierto ángulo en el x-axis so you can look down, but you can also, but you need to also like look forward so you can see the entirety of the environment. So el camera angle tenía que ser super specific para que funcionara con el camera projection y el ángulo de los characters y all that stuff. So so that was at the beginning. It was kind of tricky to figure out, pero ya cuando I set it up on the first one, then it was just a copy paste thing. So it was easy after that. But este es como que el primer version de este stage. So as you can see, y esto yo lo hago la mayoría para la mayoría de los trabajos que yo hago. I always design based on what I see on the camera, right? So yo no me voy a preocupar de que está detrás de esta roca if I'm not gonna see it, or if the camera just moves a little bit and I don't see that area, like algo de lo que no me voy a preocupar porque you're not gonna see it and it's not gonna work. So you're gonna see that I have que tengo un montón de cosas like really al garete, like around, right? And most of them are just things that I probably won't use or didn't use, pero I mainly concentrate on what I see on the camera, just because that's what really matters. So yeah, so that's the first version, and I think this is the last version. I think this is the last version. And as you can see, like, of course, el viewport rendering doesn't look like the final, right? So había mucho trabajo en from the 3D render to the final painting. So there's quite a bit of work. Normalmente a mí me gusta reducir el trabajo del render al Photoshop lo más posible. So I want to do as much 3D as I can in terms of like I'm not gonna spend more time that I need to, but I want to make sure that I do as much as I can there, and then that way the 2D part is less time consuming. Now, la razón por la cual eso no es porque a mí no me gusta pintar, es porque, por ejemplo, cuando yo trabajaba en Castlevania, nosotros teníamos que hacer, like, if we had like a room, like, right, where we had, I don't know, 50 shots in that room, and teníamos que hacer 20 backgrounds for that room to send to the outsource company. Era más fácil it was way smarter to do more in the 3D. So when you press render, you just have to, let's say you spend, I don't know, 2 hours in a painting or 1 hour in a painting from a render, then I will be able to do those 20 paintings or 20 backgrounds from that particular room, than if I didn't have too much 3D and then I had to spend 2 days in a painting, then that would have taken me way longer, right? So that's the whole reason for that, and I'll show you some examples of that in a second. But so yeah, so el otro issue era que from this point to the painting, I needed to okay, here. Yo tenía que separar cada layer of distance, right? So in this case, we had the foreground set of clouds, we had the stages, then we had this sort of like structures with the waterfall, then we had this sort of like middle ground land, we had the big waterfall in the back, and then we had the mountains in the back, and then the sky with the clouds and all that. So all those layers of distance, yo tenía que separarlos per layer in Photoshop and work them separately without them obscuring or hiding any information behind it, right? So for example, let's see. So if I had and I should have named this, but I didn't. So for example, if I had these clouds here, right? Yo tenía que, usualmente I wouldn't paint anything behind it because you wouldn't see it, right? Pero en el caso del juego, they will actually animate this. So if this moves this way like that or this other way, then I need to make sure that I have that information behind. And the same thing for, this big mountain here on the right? So si la cámara se mueve un poco hacia la izquierda y rota, pues I should be able to see what's behind it. So I needed to make sure that every single component was not hiding what was behind it. So we could actually, do it. So I have a bunch of groups here, and each group has like layers. So like I don't even know how many layers this is, but to me, this is quite a lot of, and this is actually organized. This is actually the file that I sent them. This is not the actually file that I was working with, which was worse. But to me, this is way too many layers, right? But and I had like trophies, like layers for trophies and different banners and stuff that you could put on the stage and all that. But you can see that I needed to make sure that each of these was in a separate layer so they could work that out. Yeah, and that's not usually how I work, right? But for this is one of those things where it's particular to this client, and of course we'll do it, right? But yeah, that was just one of those things. Pregunta, las preguntas se hacen al final, like how is that gonna work?
Como tú quieras, yo creo que al final es más prudente para que no te rompa el stream of thought.
All right, cool. No, I mean, I'm good. I'd rather have, I don't want you guys to forget about the questions or not have anything particular to that.
Que apunten.
Okay. Okay, good. So unfortunately, they literally just told me that I cannot show the Game of Thrones stage yet. But if you want to peek, they release a early version. Let me see if I can find it. So you can actually see it. Now, this one was the most challenging. So this is a preview of that stage. You guys can check it out on the site, but I think it's gonna he just told me it's gonna be released next week, so I'll share it next week. But this was the most challenging one because originally I think this was the first stage that that was going to have like a transition to like a different location. And so I had to design, maybe I think at the beginning was like 3 different stages for one, and they will all connect. That's not what's gonna happen in the actual game, but originally that was sort of like the idea. And so I had to design like 3 different stages that will connect with each other in a transition, right? Because it was like a seamless animation transition. And so it was very difficult because it was like parts moving and similar to like the intro of the show, right? It was very similar to that. So I don't think they end up doing that, but this is just a preview of that. Cool. So the let me show you an example of. Oh, and this is let me actually go through this first. This is actually the 3D for the trophy room, right? For this one. And this purple is because there's a missing texture. Don't worry about that. But this is sort of like what I get. And I like to show this example a lot because let me go into Photoshop here very quick. And there is there's a way that I look at how much, because I most of the time I would say 98% of the time I always do some sort of 3D, right? Even for my day work, which is even though if it's like super fast concepting, which is like that most of the time, I still want to do some sort of 3D just because it helps me visualize things a little bit better. So the way I look at this is that if this is my whole timeline, right? I'm gonna do 2 different ones here. If this is my whole timeline, I have 3D here, and I have 2D here, or Photoshop, whatever the case you use. But I always want to visually try to reach the gap as much as possible here, right? So here I will spend less time, right? If it's like this, then this is the 2D is gonna take me more time. But in this project here, right, part of the visual required me to spend more time in the 2D sector because they wanted a more painterly sort of look, right? And so cuando yo pienso en like, I'm sorry to going from Spanish to English, but I'm trying to talk in Spanish as much as I can. Cuando pienso en cómo va a ser el final look del image or project or whatever the case I am doing, before I even start, I need to set that up or I need to make sure that I know what that looks like, because that's going to determine how much of the 3D I'm going to do and how much of the 2D I'm going to do, right? So in this case, I knew already that I needed to do a lot of the 3D. So I needed to figure out how much or what techniques I was going to use on the 3D side to push it as much as I can, so I could release some of the pressure from the 2D side. And an example of that could be that if you see this model here, I don't have like realistic textures, so I don't have like normal maps or diffuse maps or bump maps or anything like that, right? So because that usually tends to push it more into the more realistic side of things. On like, let me show you an example. On like something like this, right? And this is a project that I recently finished. I'm using more realistic sort of textures, right? And so the final look is geared towards more into the semi-realistic, more realistic. And I'll show you some paintings of. So this is like a kit that I did recently for one of my classes, and I was building, showing pretty much how to concept with a kit, 3D kit that you make, right? So from these singular pieces, right, I made like bigger pieces and similar to like Legos, and then from there I make like actual like paintings and scenes and stuff like that. But this is more into like the realistic side, right? And for example, this one from the render, and I'll show you. Is this one here? Nope. Okay, so from the render, which is this, right, to the final, it only takes me an hour or less, right? And so I could do a bunch of this because I already did the majority of the work, similar to this one. So this one, I'll show you what the render looks like. So this is the raw render from Blender. So this is what it looks like when I render it out. And this is the final one. And again, it took me at most an hour and a half to finish it up and have it more presentable. And so this is and again, this is gonna vary with every client, but again, this is something similar that I'm doing for Avatar as well. So I'm doing like a 3D kit similar to this is obviously more elaborate and way bigger, so way more pieces, but the concept is still the same, right? Where I'm just picking small pieces, making bigger pieces, and then from that going to bigger pieces and stuff. So let's see. So again, but this is more into like the more realistic side of things, right? Because I get most of the information from the textures, and I still do some lighting, right? Because I still, lighting is one of those things where it needs to, like, I would like to establish it in the 3D because changing that in the painting, it just takes too long. And so you wanna be smart about how you spend your time because it's limited, right? And you have like you have deadlines and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you sort of figure out a pipeline or a way to be as optimal as possible with each one of your tools and processes. So yeah. Let's see. Let's turn this off. And okay, any questions? ¿Tenemos alguna pregunta?
Estamos verificando.
Hasta por acá no tengo preguntas.
Me están preguntando en los salones, pero cualquier cosita, si quieres sigue y la ponemos ahí en el Q&A abajo cuando salga.
Q&A. Oh, tengo un chat aquí.
Sí.
Ok.
Esto es Fichu, papi.
¿Qué?
Esto es Fichu, papi.
Que estoy buscando una pausa aquí.
Ahora hay 2 preguntas.
Mira, tienes en el Q&A tienes dos preguntitas.
En el chat.
Si quieres yo te las leo.
Sí, por favor, que no las veo.
Tengo una por aquí de Abdiel Matías que dice, ¿estos trabajos usted cobra por hora o usted es empleado que cobras por proyecto?
Eso depende de cómo el cliente quiera correr las cosas. For the most part, it's pretty balanced. It's actually, to me, in my case, is more per hour. Porque yo hago, la mayoría de mi trabajo es más conceptualized. So there's a lot of going back and forth and, sending stuff and then they bring notes and all that stuff. So, por ejemplo, con el cliente de Avatar, it's per hour. So every week I send them an update, usually every week. And then I get notes and then, I send an invoice every week with, whatever hours I work with. And then, they'll send me the notes and I'll just go back to work. And, every week it's sort of like that. Hay veces que like literally this week, he's a friend, but he works in the movie industry. Sometimes he contacts me and he say, "Oh, I need this concept, but I need it for like tomorrow or for like in 2 days nighttime, at night." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I can do that." So my efficiency to work faster and get things done for that time, a lot of times even though I represent it as a hour rate, I charge them, I get to charge them more because I was more efficient with my time to get that done faster, right? So even though I put it in the actual hourly or invoice that I work, whatever hours. So let's say, for example, that they wanted a concept or 2 pieces of concept for a stage for a movie set, right? And they need it in like 2 days, right? So 2 days, let's say my hourly rate is $75, right? And I work 8 hours a day, 2 days, that's 16, right? That's only $1,200, which is not, is not a good amount for 2 concepts, right? So maybe I charge them $3,500, but then I put it in, I break that out in whatever hours for that rate that I have, right? And so so it could look like that a lot of the times too. But for normal concepting, so like for what I do for Avatar and like some other movie stuff, and I just sit down and I work, whatever hours I work on it, I log that in and then I just continue because it's more of a continuously ongoing thing. And there's a lot of back and forth. So the only time I do per piece is that more of a illustrative type thing. So if you just want like a piece and I and I sort of establish that, if you just have, whatever budget for that particular piece is whatever price, then I say, okay, I can give you maybe 2 revisions or I can give you 1 revision. Let's make sure that I have all the information that I need before I start. So I know sort of like what you want, right? Because if not, then they will take advantage, of course, and they will send 50 revisions, and then you spend like 6 months working on one image. So that's how I normally treat that.
Chévere. Tenemos por aquí también una pregunta de Ángel Betancourt. Pregunta, ¿hubo challenges diseñando los stages para que no fueran muy similares a los stages de Smash? O sea, ¿cómo trabajaron eso?
Well, Smash Brothers stages have well, first of all, they're very well, a lot of them, they're very busy in terms of like the visuals and stuff, so there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of like, and not just things like elements, but also like the textures and like the different materials and all that stuff. So one of the things that is different from here is like the more simplistic, more into like the stylized sort of style for Multiversus. So that was a key factor. So they didn't want like really crazy designs and like all these different like colors and stuff going on. They want a more simplistic approach. So that was like the biggest thing. And then some stages, and one thing I didn't want is, and I'm still not sure how they are currently with this, but they didn't want too much like crazy movement. I know some stages in Smash, like sometimes I'm playing, like the stages like go like crazy and like I can't even tell what's going on. So that was like one of those things where they didn't want that either. So that's sort of the one of the biggest things that sort of like separate them from Smash. I think there's another game. I can't remember the name, but it's the same sort of style game.
Hay uno que viene ahora que se llama Rivals. Que
No,
era un 2D pixel art estilo Smash, que ahora lo van
Brawlhalla,
a
that's
hacer
the
en
one.
3D.
Brawlhalla, that's the one I was talking about.
Brawlhalla.
Yeah. Which I think that one is more stylized, I think. Yeah. I think it's this one. Yeah. So it's even more similar to this than Smash in terms of like the style. But yeah, I haven't played this one actually, but yeah. So that was the biggest thing to separate us from Smash. And Multiversus is a 2v2 thing. It's not like either free for all or like stuff. It's strictly 2v2. I think it's still that way, right? But which is another thing that separates it from like Smash and stuff. Does that answer your question?
Sí, hasta el momento esas son las preguntas.
Cool. Oops. Espérate, que di un botón que no era aquí. ¿Todavía ven mi screen? ¿Hello?
Sí, se ve.
Ok, super. Es que le di un botón aquí, no sabía si fue el video o el screen. All right. Pues yo tenía planeado enseñar el Game of Thrones, pero I can't. Like I said, they just told me that I can't show it yet till next week. So that's gonna cut my time, unfortunately. Let me see what else here. Yeah, NDA. And there's I worked on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7 stages for that game. And I know these two are out. So Batman and this one are out. And there's other ones that are out, but I didn't work on them. But the next one is gonna be the Game of Thrones, and I know they announced it and stuff, but they just told me I cannot show because there's like a little bit of transition stuff, and they want to make sure that people don't get confused. So unfortunately, My apologies for that. Let me open up here. So let me close this. So, I mean, I'm guessing you guys are familiar with Blender, hopefully. And you guys, Rodrigo, you guys don't have Blender classes, right?
Tenemos Blender. No estamos ofreciendo actualmente un curso específico para Blender, pero sí estamos activamente buscando facultad que pueda dar un introductory course a Blender como un alternative tool.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you
know, no. Si alguien que nos está escuchando,
let's see here. So let me show you what one of these scenes look like. Let's see. So this scene C and the oops. Oh, the other thing is, you know, I don't go. You know, I'm mainly an environment person. But sometimes I like to have some sort of character in my scenes, right? Just to show some scale, or if I want to dive a little bit on that, or you know, sort of like not have sort of like a generic character. Sometimes I dive a little bit, and lately I've been using a process that I might stick with for a little while, or something similar to that, where I will. And I don't know if you guys know about Mixamo, but if you guys don't,
sí.
Yes, great. Let's see. So, for example, this one. Well, this one is gonna be a little bit different because the base character, I actually bought it because of the dwarves. I'm waiting for this to load. So for this one, what I got, this is gonna be a little bit different. Let's see this one here. Okay. So I actually bought the sort of like base character, just because of the proportions of the character per se. If I wanted to do more like a human normal size or something similar, I'll probably do something like Dash 3D or character creator type thing. And I got the and this came sort of like in a T-pose. I'll probably have it that way. And what I did was I took the T-pose guy and went into Mixamo, grab a couple of the animations with their own rig, right? So let's say if this was my animation that I liked, right? And normally I look at a frame, right? So for the pose, so I will look at, you know, maybe if this is the pose that I want, I know that frame 94 is the one that I'm gonna get, and so I download that, and and then I bring it into Blender, and then I'll have the you know, have the animations inside Blender, right? So once I grab the once I grab the frame that I want, so for this one, if I like this one, right? So let's say this is my pose that I want, right? Because I know I'm gonna put it somewhere in my painting somewhere. Then I can, you know, I'll get rid of the animation per se, get rid of the parents, and then delete all the keyframes. And so now I just have a still. I can delete the posing. I now I have a still pose of that character, which is this part right here. So these three over here don't have an animation, it's just a pose. And then I actually take this into, I export this as an OBJ, and I take this into Gravity Sketch with the VR headset. Let me show you a video of that looks like. And so from there, I can sort of like sketch out the custom design for the character. Now this one I already did one, but this was me showing sort of the other two characters, and this is like a super quick process, right? I don't need anything either too crazy good, right? In terms of like the 3D rules, right, for character design. I just need some indication of what the costume is going to be like, so that way I can get some, when I put it into the scene with the lighting, I have some forms and highlights and different shapes and stuff like that I can play with. And that should be enough for me to take it into Photoshop and then finish it up with, whatever the style or the look is going to be. But I add like hair and cape and more like armor and stuff like that. And then from there it's just easy. I just export it as a OBJ, and then I just put it into the scene with the lighting and all that. Now sometimes I have to fake the lighting a little bit, right? So for example, on this shot here, I have some torch lighting here, but I had like a point light in that torch, and the light wasn't reaching the characters because of the angle of the column. But I still want to have the characters to be lit sort of by this sort of like fire light. And so I had to like put some spotlights to sort of like fake that sort of room light from the torches into the characters. So sometimes I have to do stuff like that, but I'm a person that likes to keep the lighting as simple as possible, right? So whether I'm using cycles or Eevee, most of the time is Eevee. But here I just have like a SGRI for the ambient light, and I have two sunlights here, sort of like in the same. And this is sort of like a trick that I do. I always talk about this, but I like to get the. Let me see if I can show this better in Eevee. I don't have any more lighting than this, but sometimes when I want to have that really strong sort of like hard light coming from the sun, I like to do this little trick where, come on, Blender, you can do it. Where I will have the sunlight, right? So I will set up the sunlight with the angle that I want. I'll have that sort of like orangey color to it. And what I do is once I have that set up, I duplicate it on the same spot, and then I rotate it just slightly on the Z-axis. So it's just in a different angle, but it's very slightly. And then I put like a really orange red color. And then what that does is gonna give me this sort of like nice transition from the shadow into the light, which is like very saturated, like usually very saturated transition of the light. And that way I can sort of like fake that with just having two sunlights there. Because if I don't do it, then it will be from light, that orangey color, and then shadow. And it's a nice touch to have that sort of like orangey sort of like transition, especially if you have like characters in it with like skin and stuff. You will get that sort of effect. Here, I think you can see it slightly here. Let's see. Right, so if I turn this off, now this is like my main light, and then this one is sort of like my orangey color. And that way I can have a nice transition there. Oops, not Epic Games. So yeah, so that's how I normally work with characters if I want to have any. The other way is just using photo bashing techniques to add characters. So these characters are made that way. I have like a huge library of not only like environment stuff, but character stuff that I can mix and match and sort of like put together to do this sort of stuff. And that way I can have a different sort of like approach and tool to take care of that section of the environment there. Yeah, any questions about any of these?
Fíjate, no es tanto una pregunta como es un comentario que nunca había había visto ese concepto de hacer un still frame de un animation sequence de Mixamo para post como un reference. Que está interesante porque lo primero que pensé es esos son estatuas, no son tanto como characters, sino que si quiero posar para hacer una estatua y añadirlo a un environment, que no tenga que pueda más o menos hacer un generic shape así, frizarlo en un keyframe, posicionarlo dentro del espacio y pintarlo por encima y hacer más o menos cómo la luz realmente va a jugar con él y cómo interactúa y cómo está en perspectiva con relación al resto del plano del espacio. It's a clever trick. Me gusta.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did some statues with one of them. I just changed the texture. I just put like the stone texture that I have on all the stone here. I just put it in the thing here and make it look like a statue thing. Déjame cerrar aquí. So yeah, I mean that's really it about the multiverses. Again, I had some other stuff to show you, but unfortunately they told me no. But I don't think I. No. So yeah. So había otra pregunta de lo de Multiversus. Did I hear that right?
Tengo por aquí una pregunta que dice: ¿qué modo en Blender uso para realizar los sculptings en VR?
Like export? Is that?
Yo creo que es que la herramienta que enseñaste ahorita de VR, donde estaba sculpting directamente en las spheres, que no sé si lo confundieron con un feature de Blender o si es un standalone software.
Oh no, it's it's called Gravity Sketch. I have I don't know if it's available on any other on the other VR devices, but I have the Quest 2. And it's a free software, so I don't think you have to buy it. And you can import like OBJs, and you can even import like if you see here, so you can actually import like images, so you can have like a mood board inside this space, so that way you can look at it as you're working. And then yeah, you can just sculpt there, and then you can just save it as an OBJ, and then import the OBJ into Blender and do whatever you need to do after that. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Que sí, gracias.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't know why the chat feels so weird. Like sometimes I see the notification, but then I don't see anything on the actual chat. But yeah.
Es que está chat y está Q&A. En Q&A es que están posteando los questions.
No, I get it. All right. So ¿qué modo de Blender uso para realizar los sculptings en VR? Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, just an OBJ. Okay, cool.
Sí, una pregunta, José.
Yeah.
Yo sé que tú trabajas con ZBrush, sé que has trabajado con Maya, sé que has trabajado con Trimax. Y ¿verdad? Para personas que hemos estado trabajando con ese tipo de formato 2.5D, como quien dice, como artista, ¿qué beneficios y qué desventajas tú le encuentras a usar una herramienta como este VR Scope en cuanto a accesibilidad o facilidad de producir whips? ¿Cómo ves esa transición? ¿Es it friendly para una persona que ha estado toda su vida trabajando en ZBrush, en Maya, entrar directamente a un virtual environment a usar el scope? Porque yo te veo que estás ahí como que con brochas jalando y pintando volumes. How intuitive o cuál es el learning curve para poder ser productivo en un virtual environment con sculpting?
Sí, yo creo que si vienes de el mundo de concept art, se te va a hacer más fácil. Because I mean, to me, it was like very intuitive. Like I picked it up like really quick. The main problem with it is like you have to get the gear for it, right? And you know, just some people they just can't spend $1,000 on a VR set, or you know whatever the price it is. So that's the first issue, right? If you can afford to get a VR set, and not only that, but if it's going to be, because the trick part is like if you already know that you're gonna, I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an actual real example. So I don't know if you guys seen the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special that just came out on Disney Plus. But
No,
if you
no,
guys, it's like a 45-minute holiday special with the Guardians of the Galaxy from Marvel. So 2 years, what was it? 2 years, a year and a half ago, something like that. So I work on that holiday special, right? And when they contacted me, they pretty much they told me what they wanted, right? And around that time, I was sort of like looking into the VR and all that stuff because I had a coworker that works with me at Wizards, and he does a lot of the VR stuff. And based on what they wanted, I sort of like study like if I could do that in the VR, so I could take that same opportunity to like not only if I spend $1,000 buying the VR, if I'm gonna get my investment back, right? You know, doing the work, right? So I sort of used that opportunity, and because I was more into concept art and what they wanted was concept art, I didn't need to worry about like having clean models or like the topology being correct or you know matches overlapping and stuff like that, right? Because it's concept, so I'm just trying to sell the idea, and if I can do that a little bit faster in VR because it's more intuitive. So for example, I was designing for that particular project, I was designing the what do you call it, the street vendors. So there's like a street area and there's like a bunch of like street vendors that they was selling like stuff like food and stuff like that. And so I was designing most of those, and so I was able to like get into the actual street vendor area and design it like if I was actually standing there. So to me that was like super powerful because like I was literally standing there. So if I wanted like a pole here and maybe some a grid here and then product here and then you know sort of like a table here and you know stuff like that, so I could actually like be in that space. So to me that was like super powerful. And the bad thing that I'm still trying to get used is that I cannot be in the VR for too long. So I usually have like, you know, 30 minutes, 45-minute sessions. And then I do as much as I can during that session. And then I take a long break, I do other stuff, and then I come back to it. So that's like the biggest negative that I have for that. But if you, because this is not really sculpting, you know, Gravity Sketch doesn't really sculpt. You cannot really edit and pull and push the actual geometry that you create. You can just create geometry in a shape and then use that to create your shapes. You cannot really edit in a way that you can sort of like, it's not the same as ZBrush or 3D Code where you can actually push and pull and then literally sculpt from that. So it's a little bit different, but to me is super intuitive because of the immersive process that you're right there, right? So you can look things around and you just have it like right there in your hand. So like for example, I was in at Magic. I was designing some vegetation for a new world. It's gonna be like this like alienish sort of like vegetation, and I was literally standing in my room and I was literally crouching and like designing the actual plant right next to me and how that would look like next to a person. And so to me that's like super powerful. So I say is going to be part of the future, or it's going to be a big part of the future that you can design things in VR. And I think you can even do collaboration. So there could be like more people in the same space designing. So I think that's going to be like super cool. Especially for our line of work. Does that make sense? Not that.
Sí.
So yeah, so you can see. I mean, I'm not really worried about. I mean, if you see, like, I never consider myself a 3D. Like, I would never say I'm a 3D artist. I know 3D, like I do 3D, but I'm not a 3D artist. Just because I don't follow the much. Like, I don't care much about the rules of 3D, like topology and like if you see my UVs, like especially, I mean, if you see my UVs and my topology on some of this stuff is like ridiculous. Like I shouldn't even be doing 3D, but for concept art it doesn't really matter as much because it's not the end product. So
sí, que es importante mencionar eso, que tú lo que estás básicamente es creando unos volúmenes y unas figuras que vas entonces paint over, ¿verdad? Que no es el end product, que no es que el UV no sea importante, porque cuando el modelo tiene que tener una funcionalidad y su endpoint es que corra óptimo dentro de un engine o que se vea bien y deforme correctamente una animación, tú sabes, siendo un 3D ZBrush artist, tú simplemente no puedes coger y explotar el modelo, ¿sabes? Tienes que saber retopolizar, tienes que saber crear tus edge loops. Que siempre que tu endgame sea claro de que es para visualización, pues entonces ahí sí el mesh es irrelevante.
Yeah, si tu product is not going to be the 3D, then you shouldn't worry too much about it. But anything else outside of that, I mean, it's game on. So like at the mi wireframe, right? So it's it's not even pretty at all. So that's my wireframe for this stuff. UVs. I mean, look at the UVs here. I mean, this is just crazy, right? and it doesn't mean that I don't know how to do it right. It's just like the amount of time that it's gonna take me to retopo this and make nice UVs. Like I can spend it somewhere else that is really gonna take. Is really going to matter pretty much for my final product, right? So yeah, it's never pretty with the stuff that I do. Yeah, and a lot of this stuff is mostly like indication, right? So concept art depends a lot on suggestive detail and indications of stuff, right? And your brain sort of like, and I think mostly with like most art, it sort of like fills the rest. So I just need to have like a sort of like indication of what I'm intending to be. And a lot of the times that should be enough. But you can see here the texturing of this. Now texturing wise is not that bad, right? It's workable. But again, the topology and the UVs are not what they should be for a 3D stuff. So yeah. And all these pieces, like I don't even think about, like if I'm building something, like I don't think about overlapping as much, right? So, this stuff here, sort of there, but I mean, I like the empty spaces here, like the spots, but the way this connects to here, right? I'm not really too worried about it. And the way I mix and match some of this stuff, it doesn't really, like the texture here is really big. So like if it really bothers me, like I would just do something like that, right? Just so it doesn't look that low res. And then I just leave it like that. So yeah, any other questions? No see any.
Dudas o preguntas, guys. ¿Estos assets particulares son para un cinematic, son para un nivel? Estos assets que hemos estado viendo como ese Dwarven Hole.
Esto fue para... Esto es más personal, pero fue como parte del proceso que yo hice para una de las clases que yo doy, que básicamente hacemos un 3D kit and then we sort of build from there, and then we build scenes with...
Sí, modular.
Yeah. So it's more personal work. But it's también yo lo uso a cómo puedes conceptualizar la idea utilizando small pieces like this, right? So por ejemplo, déjame cerrar esto aquí. So, por ejemplo, yo puedo coger, let's say I have, I can grab this, grab this. I'll duplicate that. And then, por ejemplo, I can grab this. So I'm sort of like concepting while doing 3D. And so if I put a empty right in the middle, I can say this guy is gonna have a mirror using that empty. I'm gonna copy that to the other objects. So now I'm gonna start sort of like building up the I'm sort of concepting the space while using the 3D. Maybe I'll do a -1. We'll do that. And the more pieces I have, of course, the more options I have. I already have some fire here. Let's see. This guy. Now, normally, actually, when I do this, and I don't know why it's not here, but normally when I do stuff like this, I have a scale person. So this particular model has, or this person has, like, 6 feet is actually on scale. So so I normally have this just so I can design based on that scale. So if I was walking around that, like, how would this look, right? Instead of want this to be pretty epic there. And if I do this right, let's say if I wanted like a longer wall, if I do this right modularly, I can just put an array and then it will just like duplicate it seamlessly into the space. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, this is to get to this point is the hardest part, because you got to create all this like individual stuff. But once you get to here, it's so much fun to just. I mean, I could be doing this like all day, every single day. It's like it's like playing Legos, and you will get, the cool thing is that you will get things. You don't have to worry about things being outside of the design language, because everything that you created is sort of like in that same, in the smaller scale of this, is sort of like the same. And so no matter what you create using those pieces will always stay in that language.
Sí, que es interesante porque el creative process es lo mismo, pero es diferente, es un poquito más playful, porque no estás inventándolo en tu cabeza primero para entonces aplicarlo al concepto y ver si funciona.
Yep.
Es literalmente, como tú dices, el Lego. Tú lo presentas y si se ve cool, you build upon it.
So yeah, and now we have a, sort of like complex, quote unquote, wall thing that you can put on your scene. And a lot of times I build stuff like this, and like I can even add this to it actually. Let's see. Maybe this I don't need. What was I gonna say? Totally forgot. Oh yeah, so sometimes I do this stage, right, where I'm just building stuff from here, and I end up with something that I sort of like, and then I build a scene around that, and this also helps me to come up with shots and pieces and stuff like that as well.
Mira, José, tenemos una pregunta por aquí que dice, did you do any additional research regarding the source material of the shows when designing the stages? Example, watching shows, movies, reading comics, or do they tell you the details they would like to see on each stage?
It was a little bit of both. So, for example, let's find it here. Where are you? Oh. So for this one, they already had some stuff, but for example, I had to research some of the bat suits that they wanted on the top here. So from the different the animated and all the different bat suits that you see, same thing with the vehicles and the actual shape of the bat symbol too, because that changes, right? So yes, we had to do depending on the IP, we had to do research. For this one was a lot. They actually gave me like a humongous, because this is from Warner Bros, right? And Warner Bros has like I don't know, like infinite numbers of IPs, right? That they could use for this game. And so they actually gave me like I think it was like a 50 something different IPs of things that I could be looking at to put here as Easter eggs or trophies or stuff like that. So the ball from Lord of the Rings, or the Acme Looney Tunes box, or the kite from Avatar, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So I had to go through all those and do at least a little bit of research on Google just to see what they have. I didn't watch like everything, but I would look and see things that, you know, maybe we can put in here. There was for the Game of Thrones, it was just mostly watching the intro. I think they have like a different intro per season that it looks a little bit different. So we had to look into that. But it was mostly just based on that. There were elements on it that let me see. There were elements on it that we had to take from other areas, but it was just like a little tiny part. So yeah, but that's like a normal thing. Like it's always like, I never had a project where I didn't have to do some sort of research, because even for Magic the Gathering, where I mean, we were building stuff like out of, sometimes it feel like out of thin air, because it just doesn't exist and we have to come up with it. Sometimes you gotta base things like your designs on something just so it's relatable to the audience in a way. And so the trick part is to make it look different, and make it look good, right? So there's always that part of the process. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. And sometimes if I like the show or something, then I'll just watch it just to be in the mood type thing. The more, and I'll be, well, let me see, how can I say this? It's very difficult for me to work on something that I don't have at least a small amount of interest. Doesn't matter what it is. So I need to be, for me to work on something, I need to be somewhat interested, or something that I've been looking for a while, or something that I'm, you know, partially interested in. Because if not, then it's just I know in the long term, and even if it's a short project, like I know I'm just not gonna have enough interest in working on it. Because I mean, to me as an artist, one of the main things that drives me to do this work is to be part of the stuff that I like. Ever since the beginning I started, that was like my main thing. Like I like Halo, I want to do stuff for Halo. I like, you know, anime, so I want to do stuff for anime. Or, you know, if I like movies like Marvel and stuff, I want to do stuff for that. So so my purpose to do this was rooted in being part of it. And so I'm usually familiar to what I normally work with.
¿Alguna otra duda o pregunta, guys? Alrighty. Pues José, gracias mil por la presentación, súper informativa, varias, perdóname, con la camarita para muy informativa, muchas técnicas, muchos tips, muchas estrategias interesantes de cómo utilizar múltiples medios para llegar a un producto final de una manera más eficiente, más inteligente. Que espero, ¿verdad?, que los estudiantes puedan ir poquito a poco incorporando y que eso es algo que siempre se les dice, que there's no set path towards a specific goal. Tú puedes llegar a tu destino, a tu objetivo de múltiples maneras, y hay múltiples herramientas que puedes combinar. Puedes ver el trabajo de múltiples artistas y pick up cositas aquí y allá que de repente se conviertan en un pipeline de producción que es tuyo. y que es eficiente para ti, funciona para ti y te permite llegar a ese objetivo, a ese diseño, a ese end result de una manera más eficiente y más rápida, ¿verdad? Porque como muy bien comentó José, tu capacidad de poder no solamente hacer algo bien, sino hacerlo en poco tiempo, es algo que es súper invaluable para la industria, porque la industria siempre es para ayer, todo es para ayer. Y, y tú puedes ser la persona que dice sí, pero hay que ser justo, o tú puedes ser la persona que produce para ayer. Y cuando las cosas eventualmente llegan al grinding point, tú sabes, van a identificarte como esa persona que tiene las herramientas y el conocimiento para poder construir una trayectoria corta y eficiente hacia el objetivo que se quiere conseguir. Y entonces vas a estar en el speed dial de muchas compañías porque saben que pueden contar contigo para poder resolverles una situación con un producto eficiente y bien hecho y llamativo en un relatively small amount of time. So que cuando, cuando nosotros ejercemos deadlines en los cursos es por algo, porque siempre van a existir. Pero eso no quiere decir que si te dicen esto es para el viernes, que lo hagas para el viernes. Si lo puedes hacer para el miércoles, tú sabes, eso stands out porque le da 2 días adicionales a la compañía antes del deadline para poder mirar, evaluar, tweakear y hacer cambios. Y cuando tú le das el poder a la compañía y al equipo creativo con ese tipo de libertad, porque tu trabajo es eficiente y es rápido, esas son cosas que se valoran en la industria y que siempre te consiguen otro trabajo más adelante down the line o referencia.
Mano, ahora que tú dices eso, si yo tuviera que escoger, si yo tuviera que escoger un skill después de do quality work, so para mí siempre es quality work first. That's the first thing. I won't change that. That's the way it is. Pero después, the next skill is be reliable. Y yo no, I could tell you de todos los 10 años que yo llevo trabajando, I could tell you that ese skill es lo que me ha y no, lamentablemente no es un skill que tú puedes como que visually see, right? Pero yo te puedo decir tanta historia de, por ejemplo, de que I don't know, de hecho me pasó hoy, esta semana, que a veces me dicen un jueves o un viernes en la tarde, me mandan un email, un cliente y me dice, mira, tengo este proyecto, it's a big project, qué sé yo, lo necesito para el lunes, lo puedes hacer y... O sea, as soon as I see the email, I respond right there. Yo conozco tanta gente que ven el email, sí, yo le respondo ahorita, o no, tengo planes en el weekend, voy para la playa, o iba a salir para tal sitio. Like, like, um, like I put more priority on that because I know down the line that's gonna develop a better relationship. And man, I cannot tell you how many times that has saved me because sometimes I need some freelance work for whatever reason, and this client that I did some work in 2 days, they got back to me and they say, oh, we have this new project, I'm working on this new movie, and we're doing this, and you did really good job and fast job and stuff like that. So if that would be my next second skill to have, that would be reliable, for sure.
Definitivamente. ¿Alguna otra duda, preguntita?
Creo que hay una ahí que dice, ¿ha usado SpeedTree en tus animaciones? So I don't do a lot of animation work. It's very rare that I do actual animation. Nunca he usado SpeedTree because I'm a little, I get concerned with trees and particle systems and stuff like that, porque para mí no es siempre tengo problemas con el scene being too slow or too much geometry or anything like that. So I don't do, I rarely do particle systems. I don't do volumetrics. I fake all those things in Blender, but I don't actually do them. So I've found ways to work around not having those particular things and still have the effect. So yeah, trees is one of those things.
Bueno, guys, si no hay más preguntas, quiero dar las gracias a José por haber sacado este ratito para compartir con nosotros. De nuevo, super insightful, el look into el pipeline y el uso de múltiples herramientas para, ¿verdad? Y cómo combinar herramientas que usualmente se usan juntas para otros propósitos, pero en este caso, cómo tú puedes utilizar herramientas fuera de contexto para estructurar una visualización, y exhorto a que los estudiantes sean creativos, que sean así, que no se conformen con el uso singular de una herramienta para algo, que muchas veces la combinación de múltiples herramientas que tengan a su disposición, y la combinación de lo que cada una de esas herramientas puede hacer y cómo puede complementarse una con la otra para llegar más rápido a un proceso de visualización, pues todas esas herramientas están ahí a su disposición. El hecho de que Substance sea for texture making and UV mapping no quiere decir que sea la única manera en que lo puedes utilizar, tú sabes. Que siempre es interesante entender el proceso y el concepto de una herramienta y verificar a ver en qué maneras útiles e interesantes se puede combinar para poder llegar a un resultado, porque al final del día, de nuevo, o sea, aquí en esta industria no hay un programa que lo haga todo. So que obviamente mientras más variada sea tu paleta de herramientas y que mejor las entiendas, mejor vas a saber identificar en qué momento y en qué punto dentro de un pipeline tú puedes entrar con esta herramienta y agilizar tu proceso de trabajo. So, excelente. José, mil gracias por tu tiempo.